Welcome, everybody, to the April 19th regularly scheduled Marquette Township Board meeting. If you would join us for the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Trustee Pompo?
Here.
Trustee Truscott?
Here.
Trustee LaRue?
Here.
Trustee Marks?
Present.
Treasurer Johnson?
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, and Civil or Legal Counsel Township Attorney Roger Zappa. Committee members present are Mike Springer from Recreation and Roads and Dave Wiegand from Planning, Recreation, and Roads.
Thanks, Randy. Okay. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, which typically consists items such as the approval of minutes from April 5th of 2016 and Marquette Election Commission minutes of April 5th, received committee and other reports such as the Planning Commission approved minutes from March 23rd, the Water Production Report from March, the Fire Chief Fire Marshal Report from March, the Fire Department Business Meeting draft minutes of March 14th, and the Fire Department Officers Meeting draft minutes of the same day, Sheriff's Report of March, Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority agenda for April 20th, special meeting minutes of March 2nd, and draft minutes of March 16th, the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority agenda from February 24th, draft minutes from January 27th, January balance sheet, profit loss, actual versus budget, general ledger, and their February bills to be paid. Also included in here is the correspondence not requiring board action, fiscal year 2015 Act 51 report for the Marquette County Road Commission, which we do have here in the office, and bills payable in the amount of $164,746.24. And I would look for a motion to approve unless someone would like to pull something out.
Agenda. Second.
Yes, Randy.
The only comment I'm going to have is we're not approving the Election Commission minutes. That just should, they were approved by the Election Commission itself. Should be under received committee reports. That's just the only comment I have. So we're not actually approving those.
Okay, thanks.
But you will be accepting them with the approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then we have approval of the remainder of the agenda. If anybody would like to make that motion, or if somebody wants to make a change.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Next item would be public comment. If anybody'd like to address the board, please come up to the podium. Give us your name and address.
Yes, my name is Dan LaBelle. I live at 2232 Moran Street, Marquette Township. And I'm addressing the board on something on the roads that we're going to be starting up construction season very shortly. Finding out, when they marked the roads last year, mine didn't get done, of course. Right at the end of the blacktop is where it's basically stopping on Moran Street at the dead end of this road here. And so the front of my house is left to be gravel again, which ain't gravel, it's half dirt and whatever. And you're looking at about, 20, 30 feet. And my question is to the board, did we overlook that? I'd like to get blacktop to the end of my road. That'd be great. But it seems like they went right to where the markings are, is right where the blacktop ended. And where my house was all basically dirt. And I feel, and of course it's up to the board, that, if we're doing things and we're doing them right, you think we'd blacktop the end of the road there. I know we had an issue a few years back when they did Moran Street and they put the level way up, and that's still kind of high because my neighbors still have a little bit of problem in the wintertime getting out there onto Ontario, because, people are clipping at 40 miles an hour. But I know when they do that road, I'd like to see, see if they do it. And it'd be great if they could just do it to the end, and that's what I'm here for tonight, asking the board to take a look at that. And I'd like to get that extra 25 feet or whatever it is to be blacktop on the dead end. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have a road update, Mr. LaBelle, so if you can wait a few minutes, we can probably address it then. That'd be okay?
Also, one quick question. One quick question I got too, and a few years back, they put dead end signs at the end of that road. And since then, we have had some issues with snow. Actually, last year, it was right up to the end of my driveway. You couldn't even back out hardly because it was halfway in my driveway. I know a couple years before that, somebody brought a loader down and they stockpiled it. But, I own down below the hill and back up on the other side. I have no problems if they want to take them signs down and push the snow over the hill. That's what they used to do. And then, like I say, this could be 5-6 years ago, they put the signs up there. Even if we moved them over a little bit, they can push the snow over the hill, so, it wouldn't get plugged up there at the end. It's not a big nuisance. This year it worked out pretty good, but the year before, we had snow up to the end, and then I called the county on it. County wouldn't come down and do nothing. I know in years past they came down with a loader, but year before last there was quite a bit of snow, so everybody was kind of busy. But just looking at that, and I was looking at them signs the other day, and I'm going, if they just moved them over a little bit, they could push that snow over. And like I say, I own the property below that and up on the other side. I have no problem with that. So.
Okay, we'll look into that for you. Does anybody else wish to? Mike?
Mike Springer. When we get to 10E, I'd like to speak. Thank you.
10E, okay. Anybody else? How about if we have our students come up to the podium and tell us who you are and what school you're from? Gonna make you earn your money here.
What she's saying, the supervisor won't sign off unless you show up.
Well, how many times do you get to be on YouTube? Come on, this is the fun part. Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Charlotte Thomas, and I go to Marquette High School. I don't actually have to be here. I chose to be here just to help out some friends.
Well, thanks.
My name's William Picard. I go to Marquette High School, and I'm here for the government meeting assignment in U.S. government class.
Great, thank you.
Peyton Muljo, senior at Marquette Senior High School. I'm here for the government assignment as well.
Welcome.
Okay.
My name is Jim Malos. I go to Marquette Senior High School, and I am also here for the government project.
Great, thank you. Well, I hope you learned something. If you have any
Thank you.
questions when we get finished, let me know. Okay, board member comment. Who wants to share something or ask something, or anybody? Pete?
All right, a couple of things. We have a public hearing coming up on May 10th at 6 o'clock. The purpose of the meeting is to perform upgrades to existing undersized, leaking, and aged water distribution mains. So that'll be here. Also, to the board members and that staff, Marquette County Township Association banquet is May 7th, 6 o'clock, Issuing Elks Building. I think it's $25 for us. 25th, June 25th is going to be Catch a Vision Roadshow for the car show. So that's going to be right in front of in the mall there, like in front of Kohl's and Horatio. Go to the front. That's where it's going. Last meeting we weren't too sure, but it's going to be located behind Aspen. The whole length of that. So that will be there. It probably started around 11 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock is registration. But 11 people can view all the vehicles. August 6th, Community Days at Lions Recreation Field over there. So mark those in your calendar. I think it'll be good events for the summer. So that's all.
Anybody else? Yes, Randy.
The deadline for filing for partisan was today at 4 o'clock. We had 8 people file. I'm not going to announce the candidates yet because they have till Friday at 4 o'clock to withdraw if they so choose. So I'm not going to announce that till next meeting. If you want to run without political party affiliation, you have till July 21st at 4 o'clock to turn in your petition, and there's some different signature requirements for that. So if anyone is going to choose to do that, make sure you contact either me or Lois, and we'll tell you the changes in the signature requirements. I will be here April 30th from noon to 2 for to give out or receive any absentee ballots for the school millage election, which is May 3rd. So, and with the school board election on May 3rd, our next board meeting will be on May 4th, which is Wednesday. So just make sure you come to the hall Tuesday, we'll be voting, but there'll be no board meeting that night. So it'll be the following night. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Randy. Anybody else have anything? Oh, Ernie.
Couple items. I attended the Township Business Association, a representative of the township in that. It was a short meeting because they did not have a quorum today, but there was unfinished business that they did talk about. One was the profile brochure that was put out. If you haven't had one, there's some in the office. Very well done. It talks about the township and the businesses in there and all the particulars concerning the township. So if you haven't had one, pick one up at the township office. I think you'll find it very interesting to see what's been written on that. And Jason McCarthy, who's our planner, did it for them as an outside environment, outside job for him, but he did an excellent job on the photography in that. So there's some very nice ones in there, so take a look at it. Some of the items that the Business Association talked about was the community brochure, Catch the Vision. They're looking for some input or requests. If they need some dollars for that, they're willing to do some, allocate some dollars for that. So someone has to contact them. They talk about beautification of the corridor. They're working on that. They have some ideas there. Their annual budget session, and they're also working on their nonprofit status corporation item and that. So, they didn't go into a lot of it because they didn't have a quorum at the meeting today. So, but they do have 47 members, and they're looking at 3 or 4 more joining. So they are increasing little by little. They're getting it done, but they're always looking for new members in that. Another item, if you haven't seen it in the Upper Peninsula Business Today magazine, right on the front page, they talk about the Marquette Township proposed multi-million-dollar development, and they talk about the Upsky one that's going to be out behind Lowell's and that. Very nice article in there, so if you have a chance to find one, take a look at it. And I think the other thing, and I don't know who's going to bring it up, but I have a copy of an email that was sent by a resident on West Fair Avenue concerning the dirt on not only West Fair Avenue, but on throughout the township and that. So they, I went down and talked to the lady down there, and I indicated that we as a township do not control the roads or anything to do with it. We can work with them, but they're concerned with the amount of sand and dirt on the road and that. So as I know, our supervisor who made comment did respond to them, and we did send a response up to the County Road Commission at the same time. So see what happens at that point in time. So that's all.
Thanks, Ernie. Dan, you had something, or?
Yeah, I attended the fire department officers meeting the 11th as the board representative, and a few of the highlights that was happening. The things that were ordered, an update on those is the bunker gear for the department is delayed. I'm not sure by how long, but due to some changes that were made in the order. The generator has to wait till spring to be installed due to the fact that the conduit is frozen with ice, which I'm assuming is now probably out. But the department will be participating in the Children's Fair April 23rd at the Westwood Mall. There was also discussion concerning the minimum call policy. There was some confusion as to the directive. Chief DeMars will review And there was also concerns as to everyone being treated the same concerning the disciplinary part of the directive. Chief DeMars will contact Attorney Zappa to clarify that. And I'm remiss, I meant to say at the last board meeting, congratulate the fire department. The 1st of April was their 40th anniversary.
Congratulations, fire department. John, did you have something too?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I had made some notes. I had about half a dozen things in here, and my word locked up, and they disappeared. So I'll have to wing it, I guess. If I think of anything while I'm
You can just move
during the
on.
meeting. Yeah, we will. That's fine. A couple of the things were part of new business anyway, so if I think of it, I'll throw it at you. So let's get into local roads rehab update, which kind of might fall in with Mr. LaBelle's questions. It looks like Mark's not here.
No,
Randy?
Mark
Paul's
called
here.
and said he was not going to be able to make it, so I'll do a quick update for you. Basically, since your last meeting, we have been to the Road Commission. The Road Commission did adopt the resolution supporting the letting of the bonds, also approved the contract between the township and the Road Commission for repayment of the bonds over time. The county board will be considering the resolution that is in the process of being drafted. The township resolution, the county roads resolution, and the county board resolution all have different language in them, statutory language. So that will be going to the county board on the 26th for their consideration. I saw today that Mr. Stouter had forwarded to Mr. Collis the specifications for the bonds to be included in the resolution for the county board, so that is in the works, ready to go. We're right now waiting for the road commission to determine when they will be lifting the load restrictions on the roads. At that time, we'll be putting together the final construction schedule as to which roads will be done at which time, based upon which ones are open, which ones are dry, which ones are wet, that they can actually get to and start grouping basically the roads together, so we have minimal mobilizations that we have to do. With regard to Mr. LaBelle's question, I don't have an answer for him. I know it is right now it is a non-surfaced road, and the millage was for surfaced roads. So I'm presuming that that's the reason it was not included in the project. We're not building roads, we're resurfacing the existing roads. But I'll find out.
Yes, Dan.
Besides Mr. LaBelle's road, I've had two people actually contact me concerning the same thing that Mr. LaBelle has. In fact, Evergreen Road isn't even done at all. That's all dirt, as well as the end of Montgomery also.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that we have, I don't know if there's more roads out there like that, but I would think that we should be looking. I know that we might possibly have some money left over supposedly for this from the MDOT, that the county could have excess road. Maybe we should be looking into possibly making sure all our roads in the township are completed before we use that money for that possibly. But I know those are the only two that I've been told of, but I don't know if there's more out there also.
Yeah, there are a couple that are they're not surfaced at this point in time. The end of Montgomery is one. The end of Moran is one. Evergreen is, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a road. I'd call it more an alley. That one. But at any event, those were not included. To my knowledge, were not included because they're non-surfaced roads. So the road millage is for resurfacing those that are already existing, and any construction would be a road commission requirement. So certainly we can pursue that through the road commission, but the funds that we've got right now for the roads project are just barely going to cover what we intended to do.
Well, and just one other note, Evergreen, even though it classifies as an alley, but there are houses on
Oh, yeah.
Evergreen.
Yeah.
So, that
So
should
I
be.
just say, I don't know that it was even constructed to any particular standard. It
Right.
just kind of evolved.
So I would think that would be one that we would want to look at also.
Well, again, that's kind of a in the future type project. I was going to ask Dave if he had some kind of information, but as manager said, we're repaving and preserving the roads we have, and those areas that aren't already paved aren't part of this project. And we have a specific millage to do specific tasks with our money. So wherever that would come in the future, or however we think we can work with the road commission, Remember, they're not our roads. We're just kind of taking this on because the residents asked us to. So we've kind of, I don't want to say usurped the road commission, but we're working with them to help them save their budget because this is what the public wanted. So Dan, if you want to, Dave, I'm sorry.
There was a, when we looked at the road package, the road rehabilitation package, there's a number of unimproved road right-of-ways that go off the end of a lot of streets. And there's quite a few of them, and Evergreen is another road that's just an unimproved road. And when you looked at it from a new construction perspective, if you start to put a new construction into that millage package, you get into a whole other can of worms that would have taken it from 1.5 mils up someplace up around 2 or 2.5 mils. So we had to pick a middle road that would work for the majority of people. And by law, you can't use that money for any new construction. It has to be for rehabilitate the road surfaces we have. So that's why that can't be extended. The end of his driveway, and a lot of those right-of-ways, the road committee's been looking at them for the last couple meetings, looking at the unimproved right-of-ways and seeing if there's something can't be done with it. But that's a whole separate issue as far as where the funding comes from to do that.
Thanks, Dave. And for those of you who don't know Dave, he's the chairman of the rec committee, and the township board asked the road committee asked the road committee to come up with a proposal, and they did. It took, what, Pete, like a year, I think?
Yeah,
By the
over
time you put
a year.
it together. It was quite a project. So we really can't do anything other than what we've set out to do, but we can check with the road commission and see if there's something that we can do in the future, or if they can do it. Pete?
Well, I think West Waldo, didn't we talk about that one too? One time, there's no blacktop, plus there's not even a stop sign there. We should probably make a list of these items and make sure that they have them up there and tell them what our concerns on it, so.
And that's the thing that we kind of talked about and worried about. You know, if we're starting to take on the road,
They have to step up and do something too.
yeah,
you know.
and we don't want them to just kind of forget us and the rest of the
Right.
people who do need.
But I mean, we got a road with houses on it, comes to another intersection with no stop sign. You know, so.
Well, maybe when we finish this project, we can sit down and look at what's happening beyond that.
Yeah, but I don't think we
see
should
what we
wait
can do.
until this project is over. I think we should make a list of these items and bring it up, Randy can talk to Jim Iwaniki and send him an email or a letter or whatever, so talk to him about it. So.
Yeah, these would have to be new projects, funded by the road commission, because remember, this is a 3-year project that we've got, but you're going to be paying for it over 15 years.
Mhm.
So you're talking 15 years out before these funds are going to be available again. So this, the unimproved roads and Mr. Wiegand is correct. We have been talking about the unimproved right-of-ways throughout the township for not a number of months, but years. We've been talking about what can we do potentially with them from the standpoint of pedestrian traffic, from the standpoint of bike trails, or actually developing some of the roadways in areas that currently could be residential for some of them. Now, most of the unimproved roads are unimproved for a reason. They're very expensive to do because there's a lot of terrain issues. As Mr. LaBelle mentioned, there's a pretty sizable ravine at the end of his street, and I think it's encapsulated in your property, isn't it, that at the end there? And it's the same kind of thing. You've either got rock outcroppings or whatever that make it expensive, and that's the reason they weren't developed. So those would be road commission projects, but we certainly, through the road committee or directly from the board, can identify targeted projects for the road commission as we go forward, because we are taking roughly $7 million worth of projects off of their hands. So there should be some quid pro quo there somehow. We should be getting some additional benefit back as a result of that. The residents should.
Why don't you and I sit down with Jim and start that conversation?
Yeah, and and that includes the email that Treasurer Johnson was talking about. And basically that's sand removal. It's winter sand removal. It's all over the township. It's not just on Fair Avenue. It's everywhere. And that is an issue that we've struggled with for many years. But we're at about the middle of the pack, so it's probably going to be July before they get around to do any of ours. Now, once we know that we're out of winter conditions and there's not going to be more sand put down, then our staff will be cleaning off the pedestrian ways on Werner and, and Fair and those places. But I've told them to hold off until we know for sure that we're not getting more sand put right back down, so we have to go right back and do it again. We've already done it twice. So we're just holding off basically till the end of this month, so we're fairly comfortable that we're not going to have more sand down on the road.
Yep.
Following up on Pete, which I agree with, I think we need to start developing a list, really a grocery list, if you want to call it, of those roads or unimproved roads that we should be looking at sometime now and into the future.
Yeah, we have a list of all the roads. What we need is do a priority list of them, which ones would be priority for whatever reason, whether it's emergency response or whether it's access, off of US 41 or whatever. And I think that's a good project for your roads committee, is to take a look at what those priorities might be, working with various groups and entities.
Why don't we do it if somebody wants to make a motion to actually charge the road committee then, so that it's, sometimes we're kind of lax on that. We just,
I guess what I might suggest is we have gone up and down, no pun intended, up and down this road several times already, and we have a fairly thick file on the unimproved roadways. I can pull that file and get that to the road committee for them to take a look at. And I don't know that the board needs to make a motion to do that. We can just pass that information along so they can see the history of what's happened and what prior boards have talked about doing with it, and at least give them a start.
We put that on for the next meeting, that's first of the month.
Do we have at least consensus?
I would
that's
say
a good idea?
consensus that we move forward with the direction the manager is saying.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks.
You didn't answer Dan's.
I didn't answer Dan's? What?
Oh.
Dave?
Dave.
Once
Dan.
more? Okay. I didn't see his hand up, I'm sorry.
Just to follow up on Manager Gerard's comments, the road committee started 2 meetings ago, pulling that information that Randy's talking about looking at the unimproved right-of-ways and comparing that to the developable property that's out there, and see if there's not some kind of a common sense approach you can take to that, because there's a lot of tax dollars sitting out there that possibly a short extension of a road in some cases wouldn't pay off in the long run. So the road committee is looking at that, and so just so we're not stepping all over each other on it, Jason's pulling that information out now.
Okay. All right, we're good on roads. Discuss proposed contract from Peter White Public Library Board. As you know, we have received recommendation from the three-person and an employee committee of the library to facilitate us in renewing their contract. We've also been asked to have a follow-up meeting, and it's tentatively scheduled for a week from Friday. I haven't heard back from Bruce. They gave us some dates, and we kind of chewed on them, and that seems to be the best so far. We've kind of been waiting because the director fell and was kind of out of commission for a while, the library director. So we'll see if whatever we decide here tonight we can bring back, unless somebody makes a motion or does something else, possibly in 2 weeks.
Are we good?
Pete?
Are we gonna have a work study on this? We said after they go back to the Peter White and they come back, then we're gonna have a work study and discuss it before we make any decisions.
We can do whatever. I was asked today, what are you gonna do now that you've received the contract from the library? And I said, it's not up to me. It's up to this board to decide the direction we wanna go with it. We have what the, our attorney has looked through and made his changes and subtle, recommendations. And it's totally up to us. We don't have to have that meeting in 2 weeks if we decide something tonight. If we want to put it off and have a work session in the meantime, it's totally up to us. I think, Dan, you were first.
At the last meeting, I know we discussed it with the Peter White Library representative, that he was going to take it back to his group. Did that happen yet, or?
This came back from them. This has been looked at by Roger
Right.
and vetted.
And they were going to look at that.
What they gave us the last meeting was what they were recommending, and all they changed was 2 or 3 things. One of them was to mention the Headley Amendment, and the other was the date. And we clarified the date when the board president was here, and they were fine with the changes we were going to make. So their panel and their board has not seen the legal changes that we have made, but we have not talked about what they've presented yet either. Okay?
Well, have they presented something other than what came back at the last meeting? Am I missing something here, or is there something else been presented?
By them, no.
Okay. So basically, we're at the point where this is going to be our presentation for our feelings of how the contract should read. And if they accept the way we do it, then we would vote to. So I would say,
If we want to.
I would say, has Roger's thing been sent to them yet or not?
No, they haven't seen this. Or you didn't forward it to them, Roger, right?
No, I have
Just
no
been coming
relationship
with
with the
So I
library.
would say forward that.
If I
Sure,
might
go ahead.
comment a little bit.
Yeah.
There were a number of concerns raised by the board at the last meeting and throughout the course of discussions with this. I had made the comment that the changes, even though the wording might look substantially different, the materiality of the changes are very minimal to what was presented. There were a couple of issues that we wanted to be certain to address. One of them is the former contract did not specify the correct statutory provision that the contract was brought under. That's included and fixed in this, in the one of the whereas paragraphs in the preamble to the contract. The next issue was the duration. There was extensive discussion about should the contract just continuously renew in perpetuity. Under the other permissible section for having a library contract, that is mandatory language. It must have that language. We've changed it to the other section, which is equally permissible, and that does not have to be renewed in perpetuity. So what we have is essentially, so it doesn't come due on a peculiar date, we've run it through to December 31 of 2018, so that would be, assuming this is approved, 2 years plus a couple of months, plus a few months, again, depending on when it's renewed. And thereafter, it will automatically be extended for additional consecutive terms of 2 years. That was something that we specifically addressed at the last meeting, unless either party exercises its right to terminate the contract with 6 months advance notice. That's contained in Section 4, and that was in the original contract as well, so that's not a change. But it makes it a bit more specific and perhaps a little easier to follow. That can also, of course, be amended if both parties should agree, but that's in there. We also discussed the fact that the entire contract has to be contingent upon voter approval. We can't have a contract in which we agree to pay 1 mil or 1 mil as reduced by the Headley Amendment unless the voters approve the millage. So that's in there, in fact, in 2 different locations that's specifically addressed also. We also talked about whether we should just call it 1 mil or just have some generic language of under the amount approved by voters. I believe it's preferred to have a starting point of a millage specified. That is in there also, the .9061 mills as reduced by the Headley Amendment through 2015. Now, it's my understanding that the Headley reduction usually becomes available by around the end of May. So depending on when this is completed, we may have the 2016 reduction factor, or if we move quickly on it, we won't have that, but at least for future people who look at this, for future boards at both the library and at the township, we will have a specific basis of figuring out what it was at what point in time. So that's in there as well. And also something else that we discussed several meetings ago, keeping in mind that the length of the millage is an entirely separate issue from the length of the library contract. You can have 2-year renewals, but you could have essentially 1 year or 5 year or any other period of time that the board might select for millage renewals. So there's a provision that expressly states that the township retains the sole and absolute discretion of when to place any millage request on the ballot and the length of time that the millage shall be levied. Again, that's a separate issue, but to clarify that, because there was some confusion on the part of both the township and the library folks as to that distinction. So that's in there as well. And the timing, that's in there because in some years, it might make sense to have it on an August ballot. In other years, it might make sense to have it on a November ballot. That, again, is up to the sole discretion of the township, as it essentially has to be, of when they are going to put it on the ballot. And that was an unspoken understanding, perhaps, in the old contract, but it's always preferable to have those things ironed out, especially keeping in mind that the boards of both entities may change multiple times over the years. The only other changes were strictly grammatical, in cleaning up a couple of the paragraphs to make them utilize a little bit less legalese and be more reader-friendly, perhaps. So unless there's any questions, that pretty much summarizes what the changes were, but they are almost superficial for the most part. The general content of them become more specific, but that's it.
So what could happen tonight then is if we have changes or questions or anything that Roger could fix, we could send them to the library committee, the 4 members, and talk about it in 2 weeks if that ends up becoming the date. Or, like I said, we can, if we have lots to do, we can have a work session and chew on it some more. So I don't know who was first down here.
Go ahead,
Ernie?
I'm looking through this, and as what Roger says, this pretty well addresses everything that we talked about last time. I couldn't see anything different or any changes that I would see put in, needed to be changed at this point in time. I'm going through my notes. He addressed everything at this point in time that I'm aware of in that, so. As the supervisor said, it may be worthwhile to send it to the committee and set up a meeting and then review it at that point in time and then come back to this board after that meeting and present it to the board as to what's happening at that. So that's my feeling.
Okay, John?
As I see it, you're getting closer and closer to some agreement. And I appreciate the work of the subcommittee. But I think that the suggestion that we ought to have a work session, I thought we were going to have one along the way before anything would happen. So I would still feel that way. But I think what should be going on tonight is if anyone has suggestions to give to the subcommittee so that they can decide what to do with it and where to take it and where to get it ironed out, they should be making it tonight to help the subcommittee have some greater feeling about how the board feels. So I'd like to read, I've looked at this contract. I guess it's not going to be any surprise to most people, but I have some problems with the contract, not with the language, not with the improvements that have been made to address cleaning up things and making them more acceptable and more easily read and understood. But one of our early goals of the action taken to terminate the 1993 library service contract was to find a more acceptable provision of assessing our community for library service other than the use of the blanket millage. That was one of our goals. We had about 5. None of them have been addressed in this amended version. So the research that was provided to the board found that others are now using to satisfy that problem of blanket millage and finding something else. Research found that others are now using the number of residents or the population sizes to more fairly assess a contracting community. That's been provided for you to consume, just weigh. And tonight's presentation of the new service contract contains no revision of that kind. Doesn't address that at all. So just so that you have a feeling of at least how this individual feels, this trustee. For that reason and the fact that a growing number of our taxpayers are becoming aware that a library millage service tax assessed on their homestead now far exceeds the amount they would pay if they purchased their own membership at the Peter White Public Library. I won't be able to support the proposed service contract that we have before us. A number of people, because we've been looking at this thing, are expecting us to at least consider some of the 5 measures that we offered that might be changed. And that's not in this. The contract basically gives us back the same issues of millage and the same issue of not having representation of substance on their board where the decisions are made. And with all of that, we haven't changed this. And in my opinion, we're basically going to, if we adopted this proposed contract revision, we're simply going to be kicking the can down the road for another 2 years. So I know that there are votes that are contrary to mine, and so I understand that, and I say thank you to the subcommittee, but I think there's more to be done and more work to be done to make this a more palatable, more fairly assessed tax for our people. And I'd like us to have more representation than this is going to achieve. It doesn't give us any greater representation with $200,000 of our tax dollars. So, and I hope that helps the committee at least understand how one trustee feels about this.
Thanks, John. Dan, did you have something?
No, I feel, in looking over the contract, I think it's, as far as I knew from the last meeting, it had basically had everything that we were looking for. I didn't see anything that was different.
Okay. Pete?
Reading through this thing is one of the biggest, I guess, not shocks, but maybe a shock, is that we never looked at it in 23 years. Here we got the same language, shall automatically be extended. We should have a starting period and an ending period, so we have to sit down and talk to it, address it. And that was a big thing. Well, we haven't done it in 23 years. You know, that's what we all said up here. You know, how can this go on like that? And that was I told one of the representatives, I said, you have to check your car insurance, your health insurance. You do it more than 23 years, so I can't accept this. You know, we talked about we're going to change that, but here it is, right? Automatically be extended. You know, so I don't think we should have that in there. Maybe consider putting a certain time and date that it ends, and then we have to, it'd be just like a lot of things. It comes up, okay, motion to let it go the same as it is, or whatever, but I think we should have a starting and ending. Stop the thing, you know, so it forces you to look at it. This board has never looked at it. I don't know if Ernie, if you've been on for a while, have you ever looked at it? Apparently the last time Ernie said he never looked at it. So I don't think we should have it automatically extended for, you know, additional consecutive 2-year period, so it goes 2 years, 2 years, you know, you'll never look at it again. So I think small things like that, a couple of wording changes in there, but I mean, I'd like to see it ending and starting, and, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Roger, did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
I think it should go for I should go for 2 years, and it should be like my polling agreement. It should go for 2 years, and then should go for another 2 years, and then it should end, and it should force the board in 4 years to look at it again. That's what I feel. That's the way I understood that. So if you just do it 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, you are going kind of forever again. But I think you should put it on for 2 years, then an additional 2 years, and then end it in 2020, and then that's an election year too. So I don't want it in any odd years because that creates too many problems. So that's all I have.
Di, what are you hearing from your public? Anything different or contrary, or?
Well, I think as far as what's put in it is what we wanted and what they wanted. We can always still have a work session to go over it like pizza. I thought of the date, starting and ending, but that's a good idea too. Dan and Ernie, I think.
Okay. Go ahead, Dan. I had a couple things too to share.
I just want to get a clarification. I was under the assumption that this is a 2-year contract that has to be reapproved every 2 years. It's not an automatic extension.
It says automatically be extended. Under C. 2C, it says automatically extended. So that's what you're gonna end up with.
I thought that's what Ernie was talking about at the last meeting, was every 2 years we have to relook at it.
We talked about doing it as a hybrid version, that it doesn't have to be, it is essentially a 2-year contract. If you take no action, however, then it will extend. But you should be looking at it every 2 years. That's not an unusual contract provision in the lease. You can look at a lot of commercial contracts, and that's pretty much plagiarized language from many commercial contracts. If you want to have it so that it just aborts at the end of 2 years or 4 years, you can do that if you wish, but you also then have the question of if you make it for a specific amount of time, how does that interplay with your ability to terminate it at any time with 6 months?
Right.
Those two criteria work at odds against each other. So you have a hybrid version here that gives you some significant benefits that you could take away depending on how you reword it.
That was my understanding, was the fact it was a 2-year, and at 2 years, if the board is still happy with it, it just goes on to another 2 years and keeps going like that. If somebody wants to bring it up in 2 years to relook at it again and change it, that's up to them. But if they're happy with it, it just, so it doesn't go on forever. Every 2 years, it still has to be looked at. If we do nothing with it, then it goes on for another 2 years. But
And furthermore, as it's currently worded, even if it doesn't go on, if it goes on for 9 months and you decide that things have changed for whatever reason, you now have a 6-month notification period to end it at any time. If you make it a rigid fixed-term contract, it'll be at least more challenging to exercise that.
The 6-month option.
Yes.
Okay. Couple of points that I had questions on too is under the funding in A, one of the things that kept coming up in some of our discussions was the penal fines. And I think what this board, I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but I think what the board was thinking, some of the members, was that whether or not an event was being held at the library that was a library event, that the intent of the question was that since we are paying more than anybody else in the county, basically the penal fines would go toward allowing our residents to participate in those, and the library would basically cover that. Now, whether or not they would have a separate account, chart of accounts number saying Marquette Township's penal fines, and put that money in there so that if the Arts Council did have an event and there was a $5 fee and we had 20 people who showed up, that $100 would come out of, or I didn't even pay attention what numbers I was throwing out.
Whatever.
Would come out of that account. So our residents wouldn't have to pay anything extra. I think that was some of the confusion.
How much was the city going to pay?
Well, see, it's two different things. The penal fines are assigned through tickets, but only can be used by the township, bless you, for specific library items.
Mhm.
So in other words, the township can't take that money and do anything else with it, okay? It's restricted funds for library usage. So I think some of the discussion was, okay, if we have that money separate from what we're contributing, our 200,000, why can't we set that aside and use it for things that the library would pay for? Because if a city resident goes to an arts and culture event at the library, they have to pay. It's not a library event. It's just held at the library. What if another organization, I don't know, the Republican Women's Dinner or whatever, was being held at the library? It's not a library function, but they might be using some of the rooms. So the question here was, can't we use those penal fines so that our residents don't have to pay?
No, you can't. Jeez. Because
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that was what the question was when they were standing up here talking about it. And whether, that's what I'm asking.
I
Is
think,
whether or not we can do this. Now, wait a minute, you guys had your turn.
Okay, but-
I'm bringing my points up. That was one thing I wanted to talk about. If my screen would come back on. Actually, that's tied in to almost the same thing. Does the wording in 3E specify clearly enough what happens if the millage does fail? Does it need to say specifically? All I wrote down is wording here allows for no monies to be due if millage fails, question mark. I'm wondering if it's clear enough that we don't have to take money out of the general fund if the millage fails. So those are the two questions I have. How can the penal fines be used? Can they be used for something else? And are we covered enough with not making the township responsible if the millage doesn't pass?
Wasn't my understanding, Lynn, when we were talking about a couple of meetings ago, that the city people could go to an event and they were not charged and we were? Is that correct?
No, I believe that's incorrect.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at at the time of that. Okay.
Okay. Roger, can you answer either of those, or?
Yeah, the entire contract is void if the millage doesn't pass. So you have no library services being provided, and you have no obligation to pay any money.
Okay.
I mean, we
clear
can
enough.
we can say it's in there two different ways. We can put it in a third if we want to do that, but then you end up with a 17-page document when we can state it in two. The other question is, penal fines can only be used for library purposes. So if we have your example of the Republican Women's Dinner, that's not a library service. That happens to be an event that's occurring at a library, but it is not a library activity or a library purpose. So that would be a violation of the use. However, we could come up with other examples. Well, I don't know if we can or not. We might be able to come up with other examples. One that I had, I think, thrown out months ago when we talked about this, and this isn't in here because I never heard any kind of a consensus that we were going to negotiate anything with them. But an example might be if you were going to have a book drop-off, for example, in Marquette Township. I believe we had one at the Westwood Mall at one point. That would be arguably a library service that applies to specifically Marquette Township residents because the drop-off box is in Marquette Township. There might be pitfalls to that I'm not seeing, but that's as good of an example I can come up with off the top of my head for a service that those penal fines could be utilized for that is a library service that would be for the benefit of specifically Marquette Township people because it is their penal fines that are paying for it. There are undoubtedly other examples also, but right now, under state law to some extent, if we have a contract like this, the library is required to give us full services. And there are some exceptions to that we don't have time or interest in going through tonight. But so they can't charge us a different rate, for example, for an activity that is a library activity if we have this agreement in place. But there might be different things that we could get over and above with those penal fines. Now, one thing before I forget it also is this contract is being drawn under Michigan Compiled Laws, Section 397.213. And that basically specifies that if you have a contract for library services, first of all, it can only be between a municipality and an adjacent municipality, which we are and we satisfy. That's different than the other permissible section. But it also indicates that a township may pay for the use of library services contracted for under subsection 1 by levying a tax not to exceed 2 mills of its state equalized valuation or by use of money from the municipality's general fund, which we've talked about and I think rejected just from a budgetary standpoint to some extent. It might be nice if there was a lot of extra general fund reserve, but in this, with the revenue sharing and increased burdens of things being passed from the state onto the local level, that just isn't a reality. Or with money received under Act 59 of the Public Acts of 1964, which is basically your penal fine. Those are the categories from which we can pay for things. So we don't really have a lot of other options in terms of having big bake sales or selling off surplus equipment or things of that nature, unless that money were to specifically go into the general fund under this particular statute. If you want me to explore those things, there are ways of doing that, but some of the things that are in the contract are in there for a purpose because they have to be under what I was hearing the general consensus was. So, to just sum up on the penal fines, they must be for library purposes, but the door's wide open for discussion in terms of what those library services might be that would benefit Marquette Township residents. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
That's very clear, and I wanted it to come from you. Thank you. Yes, Dan?
I was just going to say that I was always I think the only one we ever thought was a problem was the Arts Center, but the Arts Center is not a part of the library. They just rent the room from the library. So therefore, I don't think there's anything out there. In fact, I know we have the Dropbox, and I don't think they charge us for the Dropbox. So there isn't, I don't really think there's anything out there that we pay more for than any other resident does. So that I know of anyway.
have been approached numerous times once the Arts Council discussion came up, and the public has the impression that those funds can be used for that, and that's why I brought it up, so that we could get legal clarification. Yes, John?
Okay, and thank you, Madam Supervisor.
You have to just be patient.
I guess there's one thing I want to say to begin with, and that's that in doing the research and providing what's going on in some other communities who have contracted for services, one of the things I found, and I pointed out, that each of them did follow the rule and provide that their penal fines would automatically go to the library center. I think it's only fair when you look at the research and you find that all these other communities that I'm pointing to are giving it to the library. It's only fair to recognize that and acknowledge it for our use in our decision making. But there's another point that gets missed. When people talk about the penal fines and how they can be used, the last thing I'd want to do is you either give it to the library and forget about it, or you can do something else. You can delete it from the contract completely, and you can let it go to the county, and it'll get filed away, and it will get earmarked away as penal fines that have been collected on behalf of this community, and they're being stored there. What you could do with that, and it would be clearly, in my mind, a use for library services, it's a considerable amount of money. You could put that away and wait till it's sizable enough to take it and use it to delete that amount from the amount that you were sending to the library. You could use it over a period of time. It could be a considerable amount, and I think our attorney will agree, that would be a use for legal, for library services.
Instead of the millage.
Pardon?
Instead of the millage.
Or to supplement it.
Supplement to the.
One or the
Okay, but in all fairness, I want to point out that in the research that I was able to provide the board, I admitted that I found they all gave it to the library and didn't specify it in any way at all. So either, in my mind, you either do one or the other. You put it in the county fund under your name and wait till the amount is sizable enough to do something with it that's legal, or you give it to the library. And I think it ought to end with that, because what's going to happen is it's going to get it's going to be a sticky wicket when you try to let the library decide which amount of that would go for which service. I don't even think I'd want to obligate them to go through that. Either give it to them or put it in the county fund.
Okay, so
I think we should move on shortly here, because this is becoming too long of a discussion once again. This isn't rocket science. We've got basically what we want. Give it to the library committee, meet with them, we'll come back, and we'll either approve it or not. Trustee Marks's point on the penal fines, we're only getting $8,000 a year. It's going to take 25 years or more to do that. I mean, it's not a sizable amount of money. And I do agree with Trustee Marks. Either give it to them and forget about it, or just, I don't think that's worth discussion, because it isn't a very sizable amount. So I would just like to see us move forward. I think we have the majority of the board is in favor of this, and that's my feeling. And I think we should just move forward, give this contract to the library committee, see what they have to say. They'll come back to us, and we have our say again. either approve it or not approve it, but the clock is ticking for the November millage.
Thank you. Pete? You had your hand up.
I think we should have some limitations, but I mean, give it back to the board. They all know how we feel, or to the committee. Was anything ever addressed on what John brought up, the three, or even the role of the advisory committee? Was that ever discussed in your discussions?
Yes.
Because that was such a big deal when you came back, and you were very upset over it. Was everything ever done about it? Anything ever done about it? That's my question.
Yeah, well, let me preempt this here before any more hands go up. You're not giving me a chance to talk here. What we have to decide tonight, and John has brought up some things that we did talk about on the side with different options, and TAC was one of them, and the fines. What we've got to decide, or what we decided that we were going to address, was the contract. Now, if we want to talk about the millage amount or what happens with representation, we've touched on all that. We've touched on the penal fines. What's before us and what we decided to pursue was the contract itself. In order to renew this, and Roger can stop me if I'm misspeaking, because it's a renewal, we put it in, because we decided we were going to do the contract as a renewal, we put it in at the same millage level that we are currently upholding. And like he said, in May or whenever, that new amount will come up. Now, if this board wants to decide that we're going to not put an amount in there and go through another discussion of whether or not we're changing the amount, or whether we're not going to renew it and make it a whole new contract with a new amount, that's a different direction. That's not the direction that Roger was getting. He was kind of getting the consensus that this was going to be a renewal. Thus, the reason for the current amount in the millage. If we want to talk about this some more, we can. If somebody wants to say that we need to have a work session and pull it apart some more, as it stands right now, we're covered legally to continue what I thought, too, was the intent of the board, to do something with the contract. Okay? So I'm not going to tell you what to do, but and I agree with Randy. We need to do something with this. If we want to sit here and start pulling it apart some more, that's fine. But we need to get this at least set so that we can give it to the committee to take to them. Because by the time the library committee sees it, they have to take it back to their board. They only meet once a month. And it's not about rushing this. It's not about trying to hurry up and get it done, but there is a time frame that we have to deal with because of the election. So, Dan.
Actually, this is not a renewal, this is a new contract. So as far as I'm concerned, I would say take this contract that we have written up tonight, present it to the library board to give to their board, or the library committee to give to their board, to see where they want to go with it, and then come back to us with their response.
Nick, go ahead.
As Dan said, this is really a new contract. The one thing that's different is we don't address millage in the contract, because we address the millage in the contract, we have other problems, whether it's a renewal or a new millage, because that language is going to be different on the ballot between a new and a renewal and that. So and we're not getting into that at this point in time, I hope. Roger.
Please.
Again, there's the distinction between the millage and the contract. You've got a new contract, as Trustee Pompo has indicated. This is a brand-new contract, but the consensus I was hearing, at least, was that it would be presented as a millage renewal. And as Treasurer Johnson just pointed out, there is much different ballot language that must be utilized if it's going to be a new millage rather than a millage renewal. A new millage, for example, could be, well, a new millage, even based on this contract, would be at 1 mil rather than the reduced amount under Headley. Or it could be up to 2 mills.
Or it could be less.
It could be, but it's still new millage, and that requires completely different ballot language.
No, I know.
And then it gets into a situation which we also talked about, that if the Headley reduction gets to be more than 1/2 of a mill, which we're not even close to that yet, but if it's in effect, the millage is in effect for enough years, then you have to have 2 ballot proposals to bring. We're getting beyond the scope of this, but you need to decide what route you're going on this fairly quickly, because keep in mind there are also things with the State Library Board and so forth that need to be approved as well. So you can change directions midstream, and that doesn't offend me in the least. And as I've said many, many times, my objective is not to sway or influence the board in one direction or the other, but I need to have at least some kind of guidance on what you want in this thing in order to get it done in a timely fashion.
Briefly, John, 'cause we've got to do something here. Go ahead.
What I'm hearing is the board some members are ready to go, to give you something to take back, the library subcommittee to take back. At least before you move off of this, don't you think it's deserving of at least a vote of those that think the contract that's been proposed is appropriate and they can support it or not? Why don't you find that out before you move on?
That's kind of what I'm hoping for, that somebody will make a motion, or we can get a consensus of whether or not we're presenting this to the library committee.
Can I answer one question? Do you want
Sure.
the automatically renewal in there?
Randy?
Roger said if it's not in there, then it's gonna be a little different. I think you're gonna have some issues if
That
you
was a
don't.
big fuss before. I mean, we spent how many meetings sitting here? Holy Christ, it's been 23 years. How can we allow this to happen?
But remember, we do have a 6-month out.
Yeah, how did it work before? 23 years ago, it didn't work very good.
But no one asked, so
I
mean.
know, that's what I'm saying, Randy.
So I mean, it's like in my polling agreement that, I have an ending point, but I'm not opposed to not having if it says 2 years and 2 years, someone's gonna look at it, I think, so.
Hope so.
Well, if we don't want the 6 months, if we're going to have one or the other, maybe we take the 6 months out and we make a 2-year contract and that's it. And every year it renews, or we have to look at it to decide if we're going to renew it, if that's a concern.
That was just a concern before, so I'm just bringing that up.
I would say no, because I don't want to go through this every year. But I will make a motion that we, just to get it off center, that we take this to the library board, or through the subcommittee to the library board, to see what, for action.
We have motion and support. Any more topic discussion?
Who supported that, by the way?
We had a lot of support.
Dan.
Dan and Diana.
Okay, I'll have Dan.
Roll call vote.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Roll call vote request.
You're asking for a roll call?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I thought you were just saying.
No.
Okay, that's fine, the motion maker.
Yeah, clerk retires, yes. Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Marks?
No.
Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
No.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes,
That motion carries 5-2.
okay. Roger, can we send this to them, to the library committee chair, who is the interim director, and have him see it before we actually meet, or do we have to present it to him at our next meeting?
You can send it to them.
Okay.
There's nothing at this point. You've talked about it for an hour on the public in a public session, so there's nothing subject
Okay,
to.
that's fine. I'll
um,
forward it to him, see if we can get together in 2 weeks, or a week and a half. Thank you. Where are we? New business. Okay, consider large-scale development ordinance considerations.
I did it.
Yes, this is yours, and we don't have anything in here.
No, this was a discussion item, and it's coming up because we do have at least one proposal and possibly 2 or 3 proposals from large-scale developments that could potentially be additional big box issues. And before we get into that process, I thought it prudent for the board to have a discussion about what, if any, ordinance issues the board may want to put forward before those developments begin. Specifically, things such as the impact of future deed restrictions on taxation and some of the very limited things that we have some abilities to do. I expect that we will have a site plan probably within 2 to 3 weeks, and we need some guidance from the board before we start having discussions in that vein. Now, along that same line, Representative Matrin from Kalamazoo area has put together some new draft legislation that I don't believe has been put to the floor yet at the House, but is about to, that could very well resolve some of these issues going forward from a statutory standpoint. The big question is whether it'll get any traction in Lansing and whether it will go anywhere after he submits it. He does have some significant background. He is an appraiser and an assessor by trade. He is also a member of the House of Representatives and has pretty well respected. So there's at least a fair chance that it will at least get a fair hearing and may go someplace, but it won't be in time for some of the things that we do. So I would suggest that for your next board meeting that you have some guidance from our attorney who has been working on these cases, as well as Roger, with regard to what things are within your power to address from the standpoint of an ordinance, and that you possibly put it on a fast track.
Any questions for the manager?
No, I agree 100%.
Some of the things, when we were talking about it, whether or not, and it was suggested even at MTA that that was not possible, and I had asked you about that, about restricting deed restrictions, basically. And apparently we have some latitude in being able to do that. My concern, I guess, even though you said fast track, is the time frame of public hearings and stuff it's a process to do an ordinance.
It's true, and even if we were to receive the site plan that we're expecting within the next 2 to 3 weeks, it's going to take probably 6 months to 9 months to get through that entire process. I doubt that they would even be doing much this year other than doing some possible clearing and maybe footings, but would not get into construction until next building season. So that would give us some time to get through those processes and get potentially an ordinance in place.
So with that being said, what is the point where the deed restrictions come into play?
That would be dependent upon your ordinance and working with the 2 attorneys with your civil counsel, Mr. Zappa, and along with our representative who's been taking these cases through the tax tribunal to establish what a reasonable time frame would be on that would be in compliance with current regulations.
So we could put something into the ordinance saying that upon receipt of site plans, or
As a for instance, the state of Indiana, when they adopted their ordinance, basically they set a 10-year moratorium that businesses couldn't even apply for tax unless they've been in business for 10 years. Then if there were any deed restrictions that were on it, their action was any deed restriction would not have an impact on value, period. You would be valued as though the deed restriction did not exist because it's a non-compete, basically. It limits what the buildings can be used for. I know everybody argues before the tax tribunal that they are, quote, uniquely designed specific purpose buildings. And if you empty one and ask somebody what it is, and I think they did that at MTA, I wasn't there, they're exactly the same. They're a square box, about 100,000 to 200,000 square feet, and anybody can put anything in them. So the deed restriction is nothing more than a non-compete to ensure that a competitor does not go into that building in the future. It's totally artificial, and it should have no impact whatsoever on the value of the property. So those are some of the things that other states have addressed in terms of ordinance. Michigan is different, obviously, than some of the other states, a much different regulatory structure and a much different political structure. But at any event, I believe there are some things that we can put into place as an ordinance that could alleviate some of this going forward.
Yeah, for those of us who went to the MTA, Bill Fahey did a presentation and had slides of probably a dozen different buildings with no logos on them. And he said, identify these buildings. And we might have done one or two as a group. The place was packed, Pete was there. You couldn't identify them. Once those logos are gone, it's a warehouse. They showed the insides. They're poles. The restrictions are ridiculous. There's no merit. And I believe some of the wording in the legislation that's being proposed, I think they read it today. It was what if I remember.
First reading.
Right. That they're just basically forcing the tribunal to follow one of the three methods of assessing.
Actually, they're requiring the tribunal to follow all three, to apply all three in determining the highest and best use for the building, which is
some
the
exception
potential.
to that to stipulate
Yeah.
why.
Correct.
Give their reasoning, because that's what our assessors are required to do.
That's correct.
Yes, Ernie?
Well, a week or so ago, I think I sent an email to most of you to read the booklet from the planning one, that little blue booklet you got on page 9, I think, what it was.
The court decision?
There's a House bill there and a Senate bill, both addressing the deed restrictions and that. So there is something in the hopper on that side of it. Now, the other side of it is trying to work through the tax tribunal bit and that, so.
And that's what Representative Matron is trying to do, is to put a framework around the tax tribunal and put some restrictions on their unilateral ability to go off the reservation, so to speak.
Okay, so on the next agenda, we'll have discussion on what we'd like to see that happen, and we can direct the Planning Commission at that time to...
I'd like to have, working with Civil Council Zappa and with Mr. Fahey, I'd like to have some recommendations for the board to consider at your next meeting. Meeting on the 4th. You won't be meeting on the 3rd because of the election, so it'll be the 4th. A Wednesday instead of a Tuesday.
Anything else on that one? Dan?
Would that have to go back through the planning commission? I mean, or can the board approve it without going through the planning commission?
I would suggest that might be an item that you might want to have a joint session with the planning commission. Both noticed and both able to act at the same time, because there is going to be some urgency. When spring actually comes, it's going to go fast.
The deed restrictions are up, people start moving. Okay. B, consider proclamation to designate the week of May 15th, 2016 as Emergency Medical Services Week. I wish this keeps shutting off. We have a proclamation. Do we need to read that, Mr. Clerk?
We can. I would, to save time, I would not like to, but it's going to be in the minutes anyway as a written. But I'll make a motion that we accept the proclamation with reference in the minutes, and I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's go.
Roll call vote on that, right?
Yeah. Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. 10C is to consider ballot language approval for Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority millage renewal. Yes, Randy.
That is mine, and I did talk to the county clerk, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and I said, we approved the resolution to, to put this on the ballot, and then now this is the language that is going to be on the ballot. So we do have to approve that, and the county clerk says, yeah, I think you guys have to do that, and I says, yeah, I think we do also. So
So moved.
here is the ballot language that needs to be approved. And I will read this because it's short.
I think we should read it. Should have it right.
So the millage renewal, this will be on the August ballot. August primary ballot. Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority renewal. Shall the Township of Marquette renew and continue to levy a 0.2 mil, 20 cents per $1,000 of taxable value to provide funds for the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority to enable it to continue building, managing, and maintaining the 47-mile multi-use year-round interpretive Iron Ore Heritage Trail on the taxable value of all properties assessed for taxes in the township for 6 years, 2017 to 2022 inclusive, and Marquette Township share will be approximately $46,000 if levied in the first year, and it's yes or no. Question for Roger on this. 2017 to 2022, that will put it in an even number year, correct? So I won't put it in the odd year when it's done, so I don't have to have a special election, correct?
That is correct. And just a point of note, this millage, I checked the last time it was renewed, and it was 11 through 16, which is 6 years. So this is going to be levied again in December of 16. So technically, this is a premature renewal in the sense that it could be brought next year in 2017 and still be placed as long as it's approved in time to put it on the December levy. However, there may be legitimate reasons why the Iron Ore Heritage Authority wishes to do it in this manner. I spoke with the clerk, one of them being that at this point at least there are no elections, regular elections scheduled in 2017, and that would be an odd year, so perhaps they don't want to pay for the special election that might result. And there's nothing wrong necessarily with approving it a year early, but this is technically a year early on approval.
It is because when they initially did it, they had to wait a year to receive funds. And there were already commitments with different, what do you call them, not trusts, different, what?
Grants.
Grants, thank you. Just kind of had a brain fart there. Yes, there were grants in place that they were kind of stuck, because I was on the board at that time. And they said, we made a mistake, we're a year off. So I'm pretty sure after talking to Carol that that's part of the reason.
But this doesn't change that. What they did is they had their ballot language, because I dug this out for my own edification, and they put it on the ballot for 11 through 16. So this isn't changing the sequencing. This is now 6 more years of 17 through 22. So it's not changing that error or from 2010. They thought that when they voted in 2010 that a levy in 2010 meant getting funds in 2010, which Treasurer Johnson can confirm that's not how it works. If it's levied in December of 2016, let's say, then the collection actually, the distribution is in 2017 essentially. So they are voting on, at this point, a millage renewal in 2016 that will not be levied until a year and September, October, November, December, 4 months. So roughly 16 months before its first levy. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just pointing that out to the board that that's what you have before you.
I think that's because of the original delay that they had. Well, it doesn't matter.
It's okay.
Yeah, but it's unusual, but it's okay.
Okay.
All it is they're putting it on paper to make sure it doesn't get forgotten.
Well,
I think the biggest thing.
And it also gives them, in the event that it doesn't pass, it gives more opportunities to place it repeatedly on the ballot for future consideration.
Well, and if you look at their minutes too, they've gone through the gamut of deciding to abandon the authority looking at that option, they had about 5 or 6 different options in here. Joining with somebody else, calling it a different thing besides an authority. Like I said, disbanding. There were about a half a dozen different decisions there that they're kicking around if it doesn't pass. Dan?
I'll make the motion to approve the ballot language for the Iron Ore Heritage Trail.
It's already done. The motion's already on the floor. So.
Oh, okay.
This is roll call too.
I don't know what it can be, so Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
Motion carries. I'll get this to the county clerk, and this will be on the township's primary ballot in August.
Okay, consider budget amendment 2016-04.
Okay, I'll present to the board budget amendment 2016-04. It's a pretty small one. I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
The highlights of it is authorization to add to the general fund capital department $6,000 to cover final expenses for the ice rink warming building. Also requested is $3,000 for the additional cost of modems in the fire trucks. The monthly billing for the modems will be $290. Both offsets will come from fund balances.
You have a motion and second?
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, update regarding the MNRTF grant. Mike, did you want to start it off?
Actually, I can jump in real quick before Mike does. This is something that's already been before you and already been approved. This was the funding that Treasurer Johnson made the motion to come from the solid waste funding, and this is just for the release of the funds. And Mike, take it away.
Well, Randy covered most of it for me. It's a formality. We were awarded 2 grants last year, a Passport and a Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund grant. You already approved the project agreement for the Passport grant, and this is the second grant, which is the MNRTF grant. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any. But as always, we appreciate the support of this board, and Mr. Marks, or Trustee Marks, had pointed out a long time ago, it's an important relationship that we want to keep viable for the future when we do have some money that we can go after some more grants with. So, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Mike or the manager? We don't need any action then either.
You need a motion, you've already approved.
We
the
already
funding.
approved it. It's moving on. It's
Okay.
information.
It's just an update, really.
Okay. Manager's report.
Nope, not yet.
Nope,
No,
Yeah.
stockholders meeting.
Amended agenda.
I printed the wrong one.
No, you're okay.
I
It's
did,
just,
I'm sorry.
D.
It was in your packet, but it was not on the agenda. It was in
Oh,
your
yeah.
packet originally as 10E.
Yep. Okay, the Sands Township one you're talking about? Okay, yeah. Yeah, we got 3 agendas today, I think.
Yes, this is
Okay.
the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority. It's their annual stockholder meeting coming up tomorrow. And as you know, there have been some issues that have been raised with some actions that the Solid Waste Authority Board took. There's question as to whether they were proper actions. There were questions as to whether there was a conflict of interest with their attorney. And some issues with the rationale behind removing the county from the authority membership and what impact that may have. So the Marquette County Townships Association has requested that the stakeholders, which is basically all of the townships, participate in some manner in the stockholders meeting tomorrow. And the suggestion is that the board have a designated representative that could attend that meeting and speak on behalf of the board should there be motions made that would require votes.
That was one of the things in the beginning that I was going to bring up. And they've got a questionnaire here. There's 4 items that they are wondering how we feel about this. And I was going to ask somebody, I intend to go, but I was going to ask somebody if they wanted to be a representative and go as a voting member, just to throw that out. Randy?
I'll make a motion that we authorize the supervisor to act on behalf of the board at that meeting tomorrow.
Support.
Okay, that's fine too. So I would kind of like to look at these questions and see how you feel. And you've gotten information prior that kind of gives you the details of what happened, how it transpired. So
There was a
kinda
legal opinion that was
Yep.
requested and received.
hoping everybody's up to speed. Ernie?
Going back to, as you indicated in the past, we got a whole bundle of information, trying to go through it all and that, and that. Then I looked at the questions here and then tried to go back and weed through what was presented to us and that, and try to come up with some idea. I can give you my thoughts on them. What you other people think about, it's up to you, board members and that, so.
I think we should have a consensus because she's going to be our voting member there, and if we agree with it, then she has the authority.
Want to take it one by one?
I wanted to go through
Okay,
them.
let's take it one by one.
Yep. And they're short questions. Was the solid waste action to remove Marquette County from the intergovernmental agreement done appropriately? Yes or no? You want to start, Ernie? mean-
I had a difficult time trying to figure out, going through all the documentation and that. And first thing I come up with, I said yes, and I went through and read again, and I said, no, I don't think they did. I think they jumped the gun at that point in time to do it. And that was my personal feeling after reading it. So that's my opinion at this point in time.
Do we have any more thoughts? We can go down the line if you want. John?
Nope.
You don't think it was appropriate either?
I agree with Ernie.
Dan? Randy?
I agree.
Diana? Pete? Okay, so we want to say no.
You might be able to speed your process up because the legal opinion addressed all 4 of these questions.
That's a good idea.
The legal opinion basically for number 1 agreed with you that it was not done appropriately. The legal opinion also felt that the county board should not have been summarily removed from the authority and that there was a conflict with the attorney. So I mean, the legal opinion basically was that you should have the authority board rescind their action. That was the result of the legal opinion from the MTA's attorney.
Which included the right should the county retain the right to make appointments to the board?
Correct. Yeah, some of you were not on the board at the time that this all occurred back. Oh, how long ago was it, Ernie? When this
Back in the 70s.
It was in the 70s when this was
Excuse me,
formed.
the
and
90s, early
it was early 90s. That's
Early
right.
90s.
And basically, what it revolved around was the county was the catalyst. I'll say the catalyst entity of formulating the authority. And although it was not specifically a user of the authority, because the county doesn't generate waste itself, doesn't generate garbage, it is the overall governing body of all of the municipalities, in essence the townships for sure, that are members. So from that standpoint, they were the parent agency basically under the agreement and negotiated the agreement. So the rationale for them remaining in it is as a neutral parent, I guess you would have to kind of characterize it. But each of the member municipalities should have been involved in the decisions that were made, was the thrust of the legal opinion.
So we think the action was done inappropriately, and we think that the county should retain the right to make appointments, and we think there was a conflict of interest with the attorney, and we think there was, they should support a motion to rescind the action. Is that correct?
And I suspect there will be a motion made from the floor to that effect.
And I bet I know who's gonna make it too.
I won't bet on that.
Sure.
When you talk about the county that doesn't have any solid waste, I really thought about that long.
Yes and no.
It depends on how you want to define solid waste in that too.
Well, they do, I mean, the county does have, they do have some of their entities, the youth home and the jail and that create a stream, but it's commercially hauled. It's not, they're not a constituent like us, where our residents go and take the materials. They are a commercial customer for their purposes. So it's not exactly the same, and I think it was on that very thin difference.
Line.
They tried to basically remove the county because I don't think they wanted the oversight, quite frankly.
And of course, we're not talking about what goes on at their meetings.
No.
Yeah, there was something in one of the other ones that said they were passing around recipes. I didn't understand that. During a meeting. Okay, are we good on that?
We need a vote.
We need to vote, okay.
That doesn't,
We don't need to have a roll call.
No.
So, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
So we know who our representative is, and what we just discussed is what's going to be brought then.
That's why I clarified those, make sure I had the consensus right. Now we can do manager's report.
And I will be brief. You do have a printed report in front of you. I will remind you that in addition to the Capitol Conference coming up, actually, there's also a UP conference that's coming up in June, and I did put a copy of that brochure in each of your mailboxes prior to the meetings. So the deadline for that is in May in terms of an early bird enrollment. So if any board members are interested in participating in that, it's in Escanaba again, Harris actually, at the Island Resort is where that will be held. Lois can make those reservations for you if you intend to go. A couple of things have come up. We will be, now that the ball field is uncovered, the snow has melted, and it's fairly dried out. We are prepping it. The ball teams will begin their practice sessions probably within the next week or two, so you'll be seeing the activity up there, and then they'll be scheduling their games starting in early May. So the ball field will be very active again. We have had some questions regarding rental of the ice rink facility. There's no ice in it obviously now, but several individuals have called wanting to know if they could rent that facility for a birthday party, to have like a boot hockey or a roller hockey type of tournament. Brings up a little more liability than what we've had in the past, so that's something that I think we'll be working on with the Recreation Committee to bring you, and with Dave and with Mike, to bring you some recommendations on possibly a fee structure for that, for your next meeting, I hope, to be able to get you thinking about that, to try and get going. We've got the rules established already. We have the facility. It is open and operating. The major question, I think, for the board is do you want to remove that from general community use for special purposes and for special rentals? We have done that with the ball field in the past, but we work around the ball teams in terms of their schedule. So that's something we'll come back to you at your next meeting, but I just wanted to alert you to the request that's been made.
Any questions for the manager? Ernie?
I have, I think we haven't done this in the past and anything else. I think we need some rules and regulations and that. And I don't think it's going to impact anything else over there at this point in time at all. So.
No, the only concern that I would have is that if we have a rental, let's say, for the facility, and it includes the warming facility, then would it still be available to folks using the climbing structure, for the restroom facilities and things such as that? So I mean, you have to, some of those things have to be taken into consideration. If somebody rents it for half a day on a Saturday, does that mean nobody else can use it? We do have the other pavilion, but it's far on the other side of the field. So those are some of the things I think we just need to think about and how we address that.
Pete?
There's a couple of things I want to, I'll say one thing about it. I think it's a good idea. I'd like to put on a rock band thing there. I think that would be. I'm just saying, it might come up. I would like to put a teen dance there, you know, so it's, all these things coming up.
Yeah,
We were just talking earlier,
Yeah.
my daughter said there's nothing to do for the kids from 12 years old to 18. They can't go anywhere. And years ago, I put on teen dance in Harvey, and we had a good time. It was low-key, you know, they had some prizes, and we had some lighting, different color lighting up there, and we had some food there, and went over good. So that's one of the things I would like to see us discuss.
Use it as a community center type, an outdoor community center in the
Because
summertime.
also, you know, we got the warming shack is there, we got vending machines, and if we don't get some use out of the vending machines, we're gonna lose them. That's what happened at the other place. You know, the Coca-Cola was pulled out because it wasn't being used. You know, they can't lose money on stuff like that.
We do have a defined, confined area, and, you know, there are a number of things from a standpoint of a community. We're right in the middle of our residential district, you know, so, I mean, there are a number of things that we could do. We could sponsor activities there, you know, as Pete was saying, you could have a roller skating night or, you know, whatever, and it's a concrete base. We could have, I mean, simple things like the library does on occasion, they'll do a movie, you know, some evening, you know, do a movie setup inside it. We're going to be putting some basketball hoops up, you know, those movable basketball things. We'll be putting those in there. So I mean, there's a variety of things we could do over the summertime. Pete's right. There's really not much for that age bracket between 12 and 18 to do, and it might be nice to have some activities planned and scheduled for that to occur.
Next question I got is garbage spring pickup. Is it still once the first of the month?
We're going to publish that schedule because Kirk had set up a schedule last year, and right offhand I can't remember what that schedule was, but I think it was two weeks of free pickup or drop off. I know he was talking with North Country about getting a proposal for a curbside springtime pickup for leaves and things such as that, because we really don't have a good place
People to go
anymore.
up there now, because now is the time everyone's cleaning your yard.
Well,
you know, you have to wait 2 weeks.
Well, but, you know, just not too far west of us is under a winter storm warning today.
But I mean, we have to think about that. I would like to
Well,
see
it is. Yeah, those
now.
and those are the kind of things that he set up, and I don't have a copy of that with me right now, but he did set that up last year for spring and fall, 2-week periods. And I don't know if he has already established those with North Country or not, but we are talking about as well a curbside.
The reason I brought up, I got 2 trailer loads full of brush and I was in my yard. But I think we have to sort of define that, and so people can go up there, you know, free of charge and get rid of their brush, and that same as we do in the fall.
Well, and we have been looking for alternatives, and, you know, Supervisor Durant and I just last week had a notice from the county treasurer that they had foreclosed on a 4-lot section here in the township that we were very seriously considering possibly acquiring for the cost of the tax sale. Just for that kind of use until we went and looked at the property, and it's just not usable for anything. It's a ravine, basically. There really isn't anything there. There's a reason it wasn't developed. So we're still looking for alternatives closer than where we are in terms of where we might be able to house our monthly drop-off as well as our spring and fall brush drop-offs. And we do have a site in mind. We have to do some follow-up on that as well, though.
All right, thank you.
Sure, Ernie.
On going through on the corridor advisory group on the 15th, I was looking at under Marquette Township, they talked about the Meyer store. And one said the development may necessitate the signal light staying at Brickyard Road. I didn't realize there was a time period on that light to be out of removed.
Well, right now it is classed, if you'll remember going back to the discussion quite a while ago, right now it's classed as a temporary light. The reason it's classed as a temporary light is because 2019, MDOT will be doing the reconfiguration of that section of the roadway, and what they're going to do is they're going to extend the boulevard section west, basically out hopefully a little bit past Fox Marquette. So you'll have a divided highway with a median in the middle all the way out there as opposed to what it's currently configured as. So if they do that, part of the discussion was they would have a right out only to a Michigan left to come back, and that would not then necessitate a light at that intersection. The other discussion that's taking place is leaving the light as it is, leaving that signalized intersection so it would be much like Grove Street, the intersection with Grove and US 41 or McClellan and US 41. And then a third option is putting a roundabout in there. And it will depend upon what actually happens in development. If the two major projects that we're working right now do go forward and develop where they're talking about developing, the traffic impact would be significant. And a right in, right out would not be suitable at that intersection. Michigan lefts wouldn't do it, so most likely there would either be a permanent light at that point or a roundabout installed there. So it's all part of, there's a traffic study going on right now that will answer some of those questions.
I caught that because we don't know what's going to happen in that area.
Well, and that's, there was an awful lot of money put into that to call it a temporary light, but they're doing, that is exactly what they're doing, because if the reconfiguration occurs as is projected in 2019, and some of this development doesn't occur, then they would probably not have a light there. They would have a right out to a Michigan left to come back. So it's going to depend on the traffic study.
Anything else for the manager? I noticed when we were talking about Lions Field, when I was going through the bills, we spent a good bit of money on the 3-on-3 advertising, what I thought was kind of extensive. Is that just because it kept changing?
Well, it's one of the reasons, because it kept changing, and we basically had a flurry of advertising right at the end when we discovered that we could actually do it. It was to get the word out, and it actually did. It brought out quite a few more teams. So it was a little higher than what we had anticipated, and we're going to be scaling back on that.
Yes, Ernie.
That goes back to when we were talking about work sessions or sessions within our hearing here about different subjects. One of them was advertising. How are we going to address advertising as we move forward into the future and that too? So
Yeah.
it's something to think about.
Yeah, you've had one proposal that has come before you for some video. For such a small area, I'm not sure what the best course for advertising is. That's something we will have to take a look at.
And remember, that's kind of what I was hoping we'd use our little forum discussion for. I know that the library has taken a lot of our time. It's been a long time coming, and there are a lot of emotions wrapped up into it and a lot of money wrapped up into it. And, we need to be doing other stuff. That's kind of why I don't want to discourage anybody from talking and making comments about it, because we need to vet it enough that we all feel good about it. But we do we got to get going on the CIP and stuff, and I don't want to overburden us with a lot of meetings. If at any time you feel like we need a work session, definitely say so. If there are things that you want to talk about in the forum discussion that we can say, let's put these on the next agenda, or get some research, or have staff look into something, or one of our committees, that's the time to do it. And that's when I kind of try to update you on what I've been working on to kind of get you thinking about what we have to deal with. And we are charged, remember, with deliberating. That's one of the things we are supposed to do. But hopefully we don't take it to the extreme. I think once we get through this library contract, I don't see us spending that inordinate amount of time on any one topic. I mean, I'm presuming, but
We have
let's
one
hope.
coming, budget.
Yeah, well, that's why I want to kind of
Yeah.
get going on the CIP. That we need to start talking about this, because it's April already.
Well, and the other thing that we're trying to figure out how to keep you folks informed of is what's happening with the projects, because there's so many rumors out there, and now you've got, the word on the street and everything else that, is, people are reading that, and they're taking it as gospel, and we don't even have site plans yet. So, how to keep you informed so you can properly respond to those inquiries that you're undoubtedly going to get. I mean, I get them all the time. Every time I turn around, somebody's saying, "So what time are they opening?" And it's like, even if they were to put a shovel in the ground today, it's going to be 2018. Before they're open and operating, whoever they are. I mean, there is a time frame. We have a very short building season, so there is a time frame that goes into that. So, I guess for those folks in the TV audience that are seeing this on YouTube, and those that are going to read it in the minutes, everything you hear on the street isn't accurate. Just bear in mind on that. We are We are not, we do not release information until it's actually public information. So we're not trying to avoid answering your questions or whatever, but we feel like we have an obligation to the developers and the businesses that are coming in to honor their wishes about not being public until they're ready for it to be public.
Right, they want to
So-
be able to announce this. So that's why I said, I think at the last meeting, that just because you hear something or see it or hear it, doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from us either. And it's not like we're throwing this out and then saying, oh, by the way, board, you know, this is happening, so. I've been asked again to have us change the picture on our website. So what I'd like to suggest is if we can get maybe Jason or a photographer or
Yeah, we're ready at any,
one of us, use our
whenever,
cell phone or
whenever you guys can get together, we're ready to
something.
take
Wanna do it
take a
before
picture.
the next meeting?
One of the things that was suggested that I think everybody agreed with was waiting till the snow was gone so we could do something outside. So we're there at least for a while then. This week anyway. This week for sure.
Want to think about it for the next meeting, you know, 15 minutes ahead of time if you can. I know you guys have your meetings right before that.
Or actually, if you could do it sometime during the day, it might be nice to be outside in the sun, you know, having a picture taken outside. You know, it's going to be a little cool, but it's supposed to be sunny for the rest of the week.
It's just that we all expect to be here on, you know, that Tuesday.
Sure.
It's a little bit easier.
Just want to have my hair done, that's all.
You better, yeah. So let's think about it for the next, you know, 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks and a day.
Whatever's convenient for the board members, we'll make
We can
convenient.
We have to dress up.
Well, look presentable. Yes, you do. Yeah, we'll look at it for the next meeting. If we can, we'll try to figure out something with a camera, and maybe if we can get here at 5, and that won't mess up the rec committee's meeting or something.
I
or
think
the
what,
road,
roads,
whichever one.
roads is next, right? Road committee next
Next.
meeting, so the roads committee will be meeting at 5:30.
So maybe we could look at 5 o'clock. We'll see if we can get a camera first.
Yeah, all you need to do is decide if you want to do it inside or outside, and then he'll have the appropriate filters and so
You
on
could
and so
probably
forth.
do it before this meeting, because that way yous all won't be here ahead of time, waiting around for an hour and a half till we get done with our meeting. If we talk to the chairman of the roads committee, just tell him we're gonna have to be done at 6:30.
We could do that. I could probably do that.
Yeah?
I've got the gavel. Okay.
Because if it's a big agenda,
Deal.
we could start at 5 or 5:15 or something like that, but to have everybody sitting waiting, you know, so. I don't care, it'd be fine to have you
At
wait,
5,
but.
look at 6:30 then?
6:30 makeup.
6:30? Okay. Does that give you time, Pete, to do
Easy.
to do the
Dave-
curls?
Dave's- yes.
To do the curls?
Yeah, I'll get my hair done.
Okay, very good. Additional public comment? Does anybody want to throw anything at us?
Not now, it's 9 o'clock.
Good.
Congratulations.
Yes. Okay. Any additional comments? Say no. Yes, Randy.
I got 2.
Uh-oh.
Today, we were informed that this floodplain, remember that resolution we passed, I think, a couple meetings ago? We're going to have to include an ordinance with that, so that will probably be coming to the board next meeting to get that approved, and then we'll have to send it in and we'll be covered. And also, it's going to be too late for the voting, but I'd like to mention that our Lakeview Arena was in the top 4 for Hockeyville that Kraft is putting on, and if they do move on to the top 2, then there'll be more voting in a couple weeks. So I wish the Lakeview Arena, hopefully it moves on to the next level, and if they are chosen, they're going to get $150,000 for arena upgrades, and I know they can desperately use that. And plus, they'll have an opportunity to host a preseason NHL game. So that would be a pretty big thing for the community. So that's all I have. And then,
That's on my list.
actually 3 things. I will be here again August 30th, which is Saturday, from noon to 2, and if you got an absentee ballot you want to pick up or drop off, I'll be here at that time, and that's for the school millage.
Thank you.
On the voting for the Lakeview, it's today and tomorrow, 2 days,
Yes.
so you can do it tomorrow, too.
I thought it was the 27th and 28th.
19th and 20th for this round.
Yeah, it's today and tomorrow, but by the time this meeting gets aired on the, on
Oh, yes,
channel, on Charter, the voting will be closed, so.
Okay. Well, we can all go home and do it then. And you can vote 50 times. Just
Yeah.
keep doing it.
Yeah.
Anything else? I need a motion. Motion and support, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned, 9:03.